Work is finally in progress on our old farmhouse ruin on the Amalfi Coast, and we are moving steadily forward. The spring weather is ideal for the building site, as the mixing and preparation of materials is done outdoors. Winter can bring periods of heavy rain, but spring is more stable, and with temperatures rising, working outdoors is a lot more pleasant. In our last episode, we showed how our team had reinforced the building foundations and dug up and subsequently rebuilt the floors on ground floor, terrace and first floor. As per April 2025, they were working on reconstructing and reinforcing the openings for windows and doors, as these are part of the house's main construction system. Some of you were voicing your concerns about the aesthetics of the brickwork, so to reassure you, all of this will soon be covered in render and will never be visible again. The brickwork is there for construction purposes, not for the aesthetics, and for that purpose it will do an excellent job. Another task that required our attention was the huge chimney over what probably once was a tiny kitchen, or maybe just a large stove. The room has a fascinating shape, but the chimney has large cracks. We have of course been in and out there a lot, eagerly planning how we can use the space for a nice bathroom.
This is the old kitchen, or the room is basically a stove. There's a chimney going all the way up there. It's open in the top. So I'm thinking that this will be a nice place for a shower and a glass in the top of the chimney. Maybe even a bathtub, very small one, round one. And we will probably make an opening from this room and into the space behind the kitchen to connect those two.
Our engineer deemed the room unsafe, and he certainly had a point. So Maurizio and Pepe had underpinned the cone, dismantled the base where it was practically falling apart, and were now preparing for the reconstruction of the lower part, using a mix of traditional methods and materials and the means and products that are available today. To avoid later crumbling, the plan is to cast the base in reinforced concrete, mixed with gravel made on site from the rocks they have dug out from under our floors while making the ventilated layer we spoke about in our last video.
Quando spunta la luna a mare chiara, pure le pisce ci fanno l'amore. Si ravotano all'onda del mare, con la priezza cagnano colore. Quando spunta la luna a mare chiara. A mare chiara ci sta una finestra, a passione mia ci tuzzolea, nu carofano adora, dinta una testa, passa l'acqua per sotto e mormolea, a mare chiara ci sta una finestra. Chi dice che le stelle sono lucente non sa per stuocchio che tu tieni in fronte. Sti due stelle li sacci sulla mente, dinta lo cuore ne tenga lì fonda. Chi dice che le stelle sono lucente. Sceta da Carolì, che l'aria è dolce, quando mai tanto tempo già aspettate, per accompagnare i suoni con la voce, stasera una chitarra ci portate, scitata carolica all'aria è dolce. Ascetata, scetata carolica all'aria è dolce.
I'm used to building houses of wood in my own country, so these old stone houses are new territory to me. And I use every opportunity I get to learn from our team how they work on renovating houses like this. And I'm particularly interested in the old traditional building methods, hoping that we can make use of those to a certain extent in our own renovation.
C'era una carcata, la pomice oppure usano o turesci e argilla, giusto?
Noi diciamo sempre in dialetto
Dialetto turesci.
Come?
Turesci. È simile alla pomice.
E quelle calce o è calce e cemento?
Calce e cemento sempre, cemento ce l'ho uno. Che sono calce, non...
Perché tu ci dici, no, sono solo calce, no,
Perché se scendi pure qualcosa di pesante va troppo, la pietra si stacca, tipo come qua.
Ma in teoria se uno voleva fare come nei vecchi tempi, usare tantissimi giorni, si poteva fare o quel calce no?
Before modern-day membranes, they had other ways of making waterproof floors and roofs. To repair, reinforce and ventilate our floors and terrace, we had to remove the existing battuto, the layer that has kept the spaces relatively waterproof for several hundred years. We would have liked to use the same traditional technique again, but it was a fairly labour-intensive process. First of all, you'd need to burn limestone to get lime.
La calce veniva cotta prima ci stavano tipo dei forni, tipo dei forni enormi, preparavano le pietre, le mettevano dentro, ma erano grandi, e poi dopo con i fascini che erano fatti con le frasche e quant'altro ci stava in montagna, e veniva cotta per una settimana, 10 giorni, sempre a buttare, finché poi dopo il caldo di sotto non arrivava sopra e quindi diventava tutta bianca. Quando era diventata bianca significa che era cotta, si faceva raffreddare, veniva aggiunta l'acqua e si faceva maturare là dentro. Quindi stava là per mesi
tipo una
e mesi.
pasta,
Tipo,
And then there's a whole process of making the battuto layer.
Questa veniva impastata con l'argilla, pomice, calce,
e poi battevano con
e poi li
con
battevano,
legna.
mettevano a terra, facevano uno spessore enorme così, poi si mettevano con dei martelli di legno e li battevano fino a che poi dopo diventava, che loro vedevano che era bello consistente, duro, lo portavano finito, liscio ed era fatto. Ma ci volevano settimane e settimane di lavoro.
So, can we use these methods and materials today?
Adesso anche si fa il battuto di calce, però con l'aggiunta di altri materiali chimici, perché sennò altrimenti non regge.
Ma lo fanno sempre alto così e poi lo battono o lo fanno già?
Allora, noi l'abbiamo fatto, e quindi, però non ha lo stesso effetto di questo, cioè alla fine comunque col tempo va a finire che comunque si può spaccare, perché non ha la stessa consistenza, anche con tutto il lavoro che ho fatto sopra, però non riesce a legare come legavo una volta. Quindi ho sempre le materie prime, quelle lì che funzionavano allora e che non funzionano più adesso. E dobbiamo andare forse con materiali chimici per...
Sì. E perciò è che usiamo sia calce che cemento,
Sì,
per esempio per le mattonelle.
Per darci un po' più di consistenza, di forza. In effetti col cemento andiamo ad aggiungere quella lì che manca nella calce.
Quindi se fosse solo cemento...
Solo cemento vicino alle mura, cioè, non attacca bene, quindi perciò la calce gli dà
l'attacco?
viene comunque, si attacca meglio.
E se fosse solo calce non si regge?
Si regge, però non ha la stessa forza che noi aggiungendo il cemento possiamo dargli.
E quindi
quello.
crolla.
Sì.
Allora, per ricostruzioni, per esempio come questo qua,
Questo qua
solo
invece
cemento.
solo cemento.
Sì,
Qui
perché
viene
se no non
altrimenti
regge.
no, la calce per esempio vicino al ferro non va proprio messa,
Ok.
se no altrimenti se metti la calce vicino al ferro poi il ferro corrode
corrode.
il ferro, quindi non viene mai usata la calce vicino al ferro. Il ferro
ho
va
capito.
messo col cemento, basta. Quindi
E quando chiudiamo quei buchi che stanno dappertutto?
quelli lì viene fatto con calce e cemento. Quindi
E con pietra?
è con pietra, sì, com'era, come abbiamo fatto in questa parte qua.
Sì.
Questa parte qua abbiamo già fatto.
E quindi quella è calce,
Calce
pietra
e
e
cemento,
cemento.
sì.
Bene, ok. Quindi usiamo
Malta forte.
la parte della tradizione che possiamo ancora usare, ma quella vecchia non possiamo usare
No.
perché i materiali non ce ne
Non ci
sono.
sono, non ci sono. Adesso strutturalmente
Bisogna usare un po' del
bisogna
vecchio e un po' del
usare-
nuovo.
sì, un po' del
Ok,
vecchio, un po'
va
del
bene.
quindi per essere
L'importante è che non
tranquilli.
cade.
No, questo
To give the guys a break from us hanging over their shoulders, we decided to take advantage of the lovely spring weather and go for a nice walk. We've been travelling to this coast for more than 30 years, and yet we have never walked the path of lemons, which runs between our closest village, Minori, to the neighbouring village of Mayuri. So we decided now would be a good time. You can obviously start in either end, but we chose to walk along the sea to Mayuri first and start the lemon path walk there, so we could descend into Minori in the afternoon. In spring it's still not too hot, although it is warm enough for the most eager ones to start the beach season, but for hiking the weather is just fine. The lemon path starts from a little square halfway up the main street of Mayuri. And yes, it is a little steep in the beginning. But that's the thing with the Amalfi Coast. If you want the lovely view, you will have to walk a few steps. The mailman does this every day though, so I don't think we're allowed to complain too much. And cats are the perfect excuse to steal a little break. Okay, it's a little bit hot, even in April. The path even has ruins. And lemons. It has lemons too. But in April, a lot of them are still covered in nets to protect them from hailstorms. So we saw fewer lemons than expected, but there was still more than enough to justify the lemon path name. The walk isn't all about walking in the midst of lemon trees. It's more a nice name for a walk that's worth the while because of the lovely views. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can trail off from the lemon path itself and go even higher up in the mountains. We skipped that this time, but we'll definitely go for it later. When you get about midway, there are a couple of pit stop houses that serve lemon-related produce. The first one that we reached was the kind that offer you a taste of their lemonade free of charge.
Prego, questa è marmellata.
This is a great business idea, as I, in these cases, end up tipping way more than I would have paid for the lemonade if it were for sale. But I was, as usual, even more interested in their cats, of which they had plenty. So all in all, it was well worth the tip I left. After having passed the lemonade offering pit stops in the tiny hamlet of Torre, we started the descent towards Minori. And our choice of walking in the direction from Mayuri to Minori turned out to be a really good one. Not only because we could go straight to our hotel bed and rest our legs after the walk, but also because we reached Minori in the afternoon sun, which was lovely. So would we recommend the walk? Absolutely. Not sure how long it takes, as we stopped a lot for cats and lemonade and general view admiration, but maybe an hour or two. It was a bit less lemony than it could have been, with the net still covering the trees, so for that maybe a little later in the season would be good, but for the views and not killer temperature, April was great. So after this lovely walk, we're turning our focus back to the building site. But one more thing before we get back to work. Whenever we post a video, there are always interesting questions popping up in the comments. We try to answer them there when we can, but every now and then something comes up that requires a more thorough explanation, like what do we do if we change our minds on the plans for the building? We had of course surveyed the whole building and made plans for all rooms on all floors before submitting the building application, long before the work started. But in a project like this, you can't plan everything before you start. As the work progresses, you will see that some things you had planned are difficult to realize, as the state of the construction is gradually revealed. And at the same time, new possibilities are uncovered. And, as we saw in the last episode, secrets of the building are revealed. All this makes planning the house a dynamic process, and we're not totally certain how the floor plan will be in the end. There are variables that have substantial consequences, like whether or not we'll be allowed to build the roofs on the top floor. And there are new factors, like the secret room that popped up behind the kitchen wall. This is not a problem regarding the building permit. The permit we've got is very specific on the exterior of the building, but is quite general when it comes to the interiors. So when we get to a new phase, in most cases we submit a very simple application called Chila, basically just saying what we plan to do next, and it's immediately approved. So there's always time to change our minds if we see that our original floor plan has room for improvement. Okay, back to work. As you know, logistics are a challenge on this site, with no road going all the way to the house, so everything that we need on site and everything we need to dispose of must be carried by the guys or the mules along a steep flight of steps, as is the situation for a lot of the houses on the Amalfi Coast. The goal then is to carry as little as possible in and out, and to use what we already have. We need gravel and sand for casting in mortar. This is made of rock, and rock we have. The stone that was dug out from under the floors is now put to good use, as Vittorio and Pepper runs it through the frantoio, the crusher. Both the gravel they make and the sand becomes part of the concrete mix that goes into casting the frame around the base of our future bathroom cone roof. Like all of the other repairs, this is a patchwork of old and new, and by no means is it meant to be high-precision interventions. The aim is to keep as much as possible of the old, while adding only what's necessary to strengthen and complete the existing construction. In the end, both old and new will be covered in render, so the transition will not be visible. Hopefully, when we're done, it will all look like it's been sitting there for hundreds of years. As the bathroom roof cone is stabilized and presumably secure, Maurizio starts focusing on the level above and the preparation for the brick frames of the doorways and windows on our top level. Still roofless, yes, but we have hope. And as much as we'd like to roll out our sleeping bags in a corner so we can stay and follow every little development on the building site, we had to say goodbye and return back home to our day jobs, since someone has to pay for all this work. But in our next video, we'll check out the progress they have made on the top floor while we were away.